He thought cutting me off financially would break me. He had no idea he'd just woken up a version of me he'd never met. A version he was absolutely not ready for. As his car engine faded down the driveway, I exhaled, slowly, and a smile, small, dangerous, deliberate, lifted the corner of my mouth. If he wanted independence, fine. But he was about to learn something the hard way. Mothers don't stay down. They rise, and when they do, everyone feels it. And he was going to feel it first. I never thought the day would come. The day my own son would stand in my living room, and tell me something that felt like it cracked straight through my ribs. "Mom, I think you should start handling your own expenses now." He said it calmly, too calmly, like he'd rehearsed it in the mirror. The way people practice breaking up with someone they already stopped caring about. My heart didn't just drop, it stalled. Because after everything I'd sacrificed, the double shifts, the years I postponed my own life, the recent months I've been trying to recover from early retirement and a shoulder injury that made work nearly impossible. He knew all that. He knew, and he still said it. "I can't keep covering everything," he added with this fake soft voice, the kind people use when they're pretending to be compassionate, but can't even hide the annoyance underneath. A tired sigh, a little head tilt, a tap of his foot, performative empathy. I felt humiliation burn the back of my throat. Yes, I've needed help lately. Temporary help. A bridge to stand on while I figured things out. But depending on him? No, that wasn't what this was. This was something else. This was him pulling power. "You should learn to be more independent," he said. Independent. Me. The woman who raised him alone. The woman who worked herself into early retirement so he could get the life he flaunts now. I felt something shift inside me. But it wasn't anger. It wasn't heartbreak. It was that slow, heavy moment where your world tilts and then cracks. A moment where you realize the person you love most doesn't see you the same way anymore. I stood there swallowing the sting. And then slowly, something colder slid into place. "You're right," I whispered, steadying my voice. "And thank you for letting me see who you are now." His eyes flickered. He didn't expect that. He expected tears. He expected me to panic, to beg. He did not expect calm. He did not expect the floor under him to shift, because as he grabbed his keys, already proud of himself, already relieved to be free of the burden, I felt a different kind of power settle into my spine. Not revenge, not yet. Just clarity. Sharp, cold clarity. He thought cutting me off financially would break me. He had no idea he'd just woken up a version of me he'd never met. A version he was absolutely not ready for. As his car engine faded down the driveway, I exhaled, slowly, and a smile, small, dangerous, deliberate, lifted the corner of my mouth. If he wanted independence, fine. But he was about to learn something the hard way. Mothers don't stay down. They rise, and when they do, everyone feels it. And he was going to feel it first. If you're still here, you already feel something's wrong. Hit the subscribe button and stick with me. It gets darker. I woke up the next morning with that same heavy feeling in my chest, like someone had placed a brick right on top of my ribs, and I kept thinking maybe a good cup of coffee would shake it off. But the moment I opened my banking app, the world around me shrank into this tight, suffocating silence. I froze right there in my kitchen, staring at a withdrawal I never made, watching zeros vanish like someone had pressed delete on the life I had saved for. It wasn't a mistake, it wasn't a late fee, it wasn't a card error. It was a deliberate pull. And the exact amount missing was the amount I had kept aside for groceries, medicine, and bills, the essentials that kept me afloat after retirement. Someone knew that number wasn't random. Someone chose that number, and my stomach twisted because I knew who had access and who didn't. I felt this cold wash run down my spine, sharper than any winter breeze, and I whispered to myself that maybe it was a glitch, maybe the bank made a mistake, maybe I was overthinking because my son's face kept flashing in my mind, not the boy I raised, But the man who accused me yesterday of being a burden. Still, I couldn't ignore the details. He was always pushing me about my spending, always asking why older people use up resources, and I used to laugh it off because he sounded stressed from work, not cruel. But now the pattern was revealing itself piece by piece like a puzzle I didn't want to finish. There's a different kind of heartbreak when the truth stops whispering and starts screaming. And suddenly I wasn't looking at a missing amount. I was looking at intention. I kept pacing the kitchen, the tiles cold under my feet, and every time the fridge hummed, my nerves jumped like the house itself was warning me something was shifting. The more I stared at the phone, the more a knot formed in my throat, because I realized this wasn't just financial manipulation. It was control. This was the first step in making me dependent, the kind of dependence abusers love, the kind that lets them say, "See? You need me." And I felt something inside me tighten. Something small but powerful. Something that had been quiet for years. I wasn't scared of poverty. I'd been poor before. I was scared of the betrayal behind it, the way it was wrapped in the voice of my own son. And right when I started typing a message to confront him, something inside me whispered to wait, because confronting a person who plans your downfall rarely ends with clarity. It ends with gaslighting. Still, I needed answers, so I sat down and replayed every moment from the past few months. His sudden interest in my finances, his irritation whenever I paid my own bills, his bragging about saving money now that he didn't have to worry about me, even though I never asked him for a single dollar. And that memory from last Christmas came back. The way his wife looked at me when I gifted them something expensive. The way her eyes narrowed like generosity was an offense. The way she said, "You really didn't need to buy that," with a smile that had no warmth in it. Back then I brushed it off as insecurity. Now it felt like a warning I didn't listen to. And then, just when that thought settled, the hallway temperature dropped, and I swear the air felt thicker, heavier, like the house itself was holding its breath. It's strange how you can feel danger before it arrives. How silence can get louder right before a secret knocks on your door. And that's exactly what happened. A sharp knock at my front door that made my heart jolt hard enough to sting. I already knew who it was before I opened it, because some betrayals carry their own sound, and her soft voice on the other side confirmed it. It was his wife. And the look in her eyes said she wasn't there to comfort me. But what she told me next made me realize the missing money was only the first step in their plan, and I wasn't supposed to survive the last one. She stepped inside with that overly sweet smile she always wore, the kind that felt painted on rather than earned, and immediately the atmosphere shifted, like the air thinned just enough to make my lungs notice. I could feel her eyes scanning the room, scanning me, scanning the silence itself, and it struck me that she didn't look surprised to see me rattled. She looked satisfied. That tiny spark of relief in her expression wasn't compassion. It was confirmation. Like she needed to make sure I was exactly where her plan expected me to be. I stood still for a moment, letting her words wash over me, pretending to be calm, but my instincts kept whispering that today wasn't a casual visit. Today was a checkpoint. She sat at the kitchen table without asking, crossing her legs and smoothing her dress like she was preparing for a performance she had practiced in the mirror. I offered her coffee mostly to buy time, but the way she watched me move, slow, calculated, tracking every gesture, made my skin buzz with unease. And somewhere between me reaching for the sugar and her leaning her head to the side, I caught it. Something almost predatory in her stillness, like she wasn't absorbing my words, she was absorbing my mental state. That realization gave my heart a small, uncomfortable jolt. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but too rehearsed. "We're worried about you," she said. But the tonality wrapped around the words like plastic, smooth, shiny, and completely synthetic. Then she added, "Financial pressure can be overwhelming at your age." And the insult was so casually delivered it almost felt intentional. I felt a heat spike in my chest, not from hurt but from the audacity. Yet I forced myself into stillness because reacting would give her the advantage she clearly came to test for. Some battles are won by silence, and I needed to observe her more than she realized. While she rambled about support and responsibility, my mind wandered through past interactions, stitching together pieces I once dismissed. My son's sudden irritation whenever I asked simple questions about his life. The unexplained moments he'd snap at me for offering help. The times he avoided hugging me at holidays like affection cost him something he didn't want to give. And last year, when I offered to leave him a sentimental piece of jewelry, he muttered, "Is it worth anything?" under his breath, thinking I didn't hear. That memory now landed with a clarity so sharp it almost stung. Resentment wasn't new. There had been cracks long before this. I just didn't want to see them. She leaned forward suddenly, lowering her voice like she was unpacking a secret meant to sound caring but delivered with the precision of manipulation. "Your son thinks it might be best if he handles your finances from now on," she murmured. Not a suggestion, not a discussion, a decision. The kind of decision that comes with paperwork waiting in a drawer somewhere. And the way she emphasized best made my stomach tighten because it wasn't about helping. It was about control, consolidation, preparing a next step that required me to be dependent, quiet, and cut off from options. For a brief second, the room felt too still, too quiet, almost muffled, and that silence carved a tiny emotional lull in me. Not panic, not anger, but a strange, steadier curiosity. What exactly were they planning? Why the urgency? Why now, right after the missing money? And as that thought formed, a small vibration broke the air. Her phone buzzing on the table. She grabbed it quickly, but not quick enough to hide the flicker in her expression. Not fear, recognition. The kind of look someone gives when they receive an update. Or a signal. Her shoulders stiffened, her throat tightened, and she clicked the screen off as if hiding evidence. My mind raced instantly. What message could make her react like that? A reminder? A confirmation? A step in the process? Couldn't be random. Not with her level of control. She tried to continue talking, but her voice wobbled just enough to reveal she wasn't done here. She was running late for something else. Something that required coordination. Something involving my son, and likely involving me. That buzz wasn't just a message. It was a cue. A timing cue. And in that moment I knew whatever my son had planned wasn't emotional, wasn't accidental, and wasn't just financial. It was organized, scheduled, and already moving forward without my consent. And the next phase was about to close in on me faster than I was prepared for. I stood there frozen. Not because the envelope was strange, but because my name on it felt wrong, like it was printed for a version of me that didn't exist yet. The paper inside was crisp. Too crisp. Freshly printed. Recently handled. And the moment I saw the words petition for adult guardianship, my stomach dropped so sharply it felt like the floor moved. For a second my mind went blank. Not emotional, just empty. A quiet, terrifying stillness. Then everything rushed back at once. The way my son avoided eye contact yesterday, the sudden coldness in his voice, the buzz of his phone in Module 3, and how he tilted the screen away from me. As if I wasn't supposed to see anything at all. And now this document, dated only 3 days ago, perfectly aligned with that hidden message he received. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a timeline. A plan. My hands trembled, but my thoughts suddenly sharpened, like a thin blade sliding clean through fog. Because this wasn't just betrayal, this was strategy, preparation, coordination. He wasn't trying to control my money. He was trying to control me, my decisions, my autonomy, my entire life. For a single moment, the emotion drained out of my body, and a cold, calculating clarity took its place. I scanned every line of that form. Not as a mother, but as someone studying an enemy's blueprint. He claimed I was forgetful, confused, potentially unsafe to manage my own estate. Lies. but someone had helped him frame carefully. I looked toward the hallway. The house suddenly felt too quiet, too observant, like someone had been here earlier, or expected to come back soon. And right then, a realization hit me so hard my knees almost buckled. Someone wasn't just trying to take my finances. They were preparing to take my freedom. And by the time I discovered it, I might have already been one step behind, because the very next sound I heard told me this wasn't a plan on paper anymore. It was already in motion. The sound came softly at first, a faint click like a door easing shut somewhere in the house. Not loud, not alarming, just wrong. My breath held itself in my chest, because I was alone, and every lock I'd touched earlier flashed through my mind like a warning. For a few seconds I didn't move. I just listened. The kind of listening where your heartbeat becomes louder than anything else. Then footsteps. Deliberate. Measured. Moving down the hallway with the confidence of someone who didn't need permission to be here. I slid the guardianship papers beneath old mail, hands moving with quiet precision, not fear focus. As the footsteps grew nearer, the air tightened, as if whoever entered brought something heavy with them. When he turned the corner, my breath snagged. Not my son. Not his wife. A stranger. Tall. Professional. A leather folder tucked under his arm. A smile that was practiced, polished hollow. "Mrs. Hunter?" he asked, voice smooth, almost rehearsed. A cold spread through me. People don't arrive with folders unless they intend to decide something for you. "I'm with the firm handling your son's petition," he said. "I just need a quick signature to finalize a few things." Finalize. As if the outcome was already agreed upon. As if my consent was just a formality they expected me to offer quietly. My pulse drummed against my ribs. He set the folder on my kitchen table, casual, comfortable, like he'd done this many times before. I forced my voice steady. "What things?" It sounded calm, but inside something sharpened. A line. A point. A decision. He smiled wider. That smug, courteous kind people wear when they think you're already defeated. "You don't need the details," he said. "Your son already." He stopped. As I had changed. My expression, my posture, my silence. Something in me shifted from overwhelmed mother to something far more dangerous. I wasn't signing anything. Not today. Not ever. And as he waited for obedience, I waited for truth. The truth hidden inside that folder. And the reason he walked in as if he knew exactly how far they'd pushed me. Then his folder slipped open, revealing a document dated for tomorrow, proof that he wasn't early. He was here ahead of schedule, as if someone had told him I'd discover everything today. If this moment made your heart jump, hit the like button, and drop a comment for me. Which beautiful country are you tuning in from, and what time is it for you right now? Because the next part changes everything. I didn't move for a moment after the man stepped farther into my living room, because something about the way he entered still wasn't right. He came in too confidently, too straight, like he already knew the layout of my home before crossing the threshold. And that thought alone made a cold ripple crawl up my spine. I glanced toward the back hallway just once, too quick for him to notice, but long enough for dread to spark inside me. The bolt on that door was shifted, not forced, shifted, as if someone had turned it earlier. Someone with access. Someone who wanted him inside before I realized what they were planning. He kept talking in that corporate smooth tone, but his eyes kept darting at his phone like he was waiting for a signal, not giving one. That tiny detail told me everything. He wasn't in charge. He wasn't the mastermind. He was following orders, dangerous ones, from someone who didn't want me thinking too long. And the way his jaw tightened every time I didn't immediately answer? That wasn't confidence. That was pressure. Someone else was watching the clock. Someone else was measuring every second I stayed conscious, aware, uncontrolled. When I didn't reach for the pen, his mask cracked just slightly. barely a twitch near his mouth, a flicker of impatience. He needed my signature, but not just today. Right now. And when his phone buzzed again, he jerked. Not startled, scared. Scared of whoever was texting him. Scared of disappointing them. Scared of what missing this deadline meant. And that fear wasn't about paperwork. It was about whatever plan my son was accelerating behind the scenes. He tried to regain composure, smoothing his voice, telling me this was routine and in my best interest. But his eyes betrayed him. He wasn't trying to reassure me. He was trying to appease someone else. Someone who clearly told him that I'd sign quickly. Someone who believed I'd be confused, overwhelmed, easy to manipulate. And when he said, "It's an expedited process," my stomach dropped, because now I knew what that buzz from Module 3 really was. The signal that I'd opened the envelope, that the timeline could be moved, that they could push earlier than planned. They weren't waiting for legal paperwork. They were fabricating it, forging it, manufacturing a narrative that painted me as unstable before the courts ever saw my name. He stepped closer, just an inch, but enough to make the air tighten between us. I caught the faintest scent on him. Cologne mixed with something sharper, metallic, like he'd touched doorknobs or tools still cold from night air. My heart hammered, but I didn't let him see fear. Instead, I let a tiny tremor slip, strategic, enough for him to underestimate me again. Enough for him to think I was slipping, bending, weakening. Because if he believed that, he'd reveal more than he intended. But the réalité came when he glanced, fast, nervous, toward the hallway where the shifted lock sat. That glance wasn't about safety. It was about coordination. About whether the person who let him in was still nearby. Whether the plan was still on schedule. Whether I was still manageable. And in that single moment, everything snapped into place. My son didn't just want control of my finances. He wanted control of me. My body, my decisions, my legal autonomy. And he wasn't working alone. He'd partnered with people who knew how to bend systems, bypass timelines, and walk right through doors I thought were locked. But he miscalculated one thing. I wasn't the frightened, desperate mother they had prepared for. I am awake now. Dangerous now. And the man in my living room could feel the shift so clearly that he took half a step back without even realizing it. And just when he tried to regain dominance, his phone vibrated again. Harder this time. He froze. And I watched a shadow of panic crease across his face. Panic that told me whoever was outside, whoever was orchestrating this, had just sent a message that changed the plan again. And that's when I knew the person texting him wasn't far. They were close. Too close. Maybe even already inside. What the next message said, and what it forced him to do next, changed everything. I didn't need to read the next message to feel what it meant, because the man's whole body reacted before he even looked at the screen. His shoulders locked, his breath hitched, and a flicker of pure dread moved across his face like someone had just shifted the ground under him. And the way he swallowed, hard, tight, nervous, told me this wasn't some routine nudge from a supervisor. This was an order. A direct one. An urgent one. The kind of message that meant the timeline had changed again. And not in his favor. The fear rolling off him made my skin crawl because suddenly, I wasn't just dealing with the legal threat anymore. I was dealing with someone trapped in someone else's plan. Someone who was scared of disappointing the wrong person. Someone who wasn't in control of his own actions anymore. He stepped toward me, but this time he didn't pretend to be calm. No soft tone, no corporate smoothness. Only a shaky urgency that leaked through every movement. And that's when I noticed something I hadn't before. A faint smear of dust on his sleeve, like he'd brushed against a door frame or surface inside my house that he shouldn't have touched. And my stomach twisted violently because that dust wasn't from my living room. It was from the back hallway. The hallway where the lock had been shifted. The hallway I hadn't walked through since last night. Someone had been there recently, very recently. My pulse hammered as I replayed the timeline in my head. The envelope, the early schedule, the knock, the unlocked door, the buzz. the stranger arriving too soon, the wife showing up right after, and now this message that rattled him like a command he couldn't refuse. None of it was a coincidence. None of it was random. Someone was choreographing every second, calculating my fear, measuring my silence, counting on my confusion. And the house felt colder now, not physically, but in that way a room changes when there's someone standing in the blind spot of your vision. Someone you can't see yet. The man read the message finally, and his face drained so fast it almost looked like he'd seen a ghost. His hand trembled slightly as he lowered the phone, and for the first time he didn't look at me like a client. He looked at me like a problem he needed to neutralize before his boss found out he'd lost control. And that was the moment something clicked in me. Something sharp, calculating, and far from helpless. I straightened slowly, my spine going cold with clarity, because if he was afraid, then I was not the vulnerable one in this room. He was. And fear makes people sloppy. Sloppy people make mistakes. And mistakes leave openings. I took one step backward, not out of fear, but to shift his angle, to force him to turn slightly, to make him expose the corner behind him without realizing it. And it worked. He moved just enough for me to see what he'd been blocking with his body. Faint boot marks on my hardwood floor, small, precise, recent. The kind someone makes when they stand perfectly still while waiting for a cue. My skin prickled violently. Someone else had been inside before he entered. Someone who didn't leave through the front door. Someone who moved quietly. Someone who watched. The man's phone buzzed again. Short, sharp, impatient. His fingers twitched. His breathing stuttered. And this time, he didn't dare open the message right away. His hesitation told me the truth I'd been circling since Module 3. My son wasn't improvising anymore. He was executing a plan. A structured one. A rehearsed one. A dangerous one. And whoever was feeding this stranger instructions wasn't doing it from miles away. They were close enough to hear, close enough to see, close enough to monitor every second. And then just as he finally lifted the phone, the house made a sound I will never forget, a slow, deliberate shift of weight from the back hallway. Like someone taking a single step they no longer cared to hide. My blood froze. The stranger's head snapped toward the hallway instantly, confirming everything I feared. He wasn't alone. He never had been. Rehearsed, and when I finally saw who stepped out of that hallway, my world split in half. It wasn't who I expected. It was someone far worse. The hallway felt wrong the moment I stepped into it, not just old house weird, but the same heavy air pressure I felt the night I caught those footprints turning toward my door. Like something had walked ahead of me and was waiting. Every step echoed sharper than it should have, and each echo landed late, delayed, like the house was listening, not responding. That I kept thinking about my son's warning. His weird, half-panic scribble from Module 5. Don't follow the hall. Yeah, too late for that. I reached the final door. The one Grandma never mentioned. The one missing from every blueprint, as if it had been added later, by someone who didn't want it found out. A cold draft slid under the door. Not normal cold, but that cellar breath ice that hits the back of your spine first. My hand hovered over the brass knob. I felt my pulse in my palm. And something else, that stupid stubborn shift inside me that had been growing since Module 3, right after I realized someone had been in my room. I wasn't just scared anymore. I was done running. That was the thought that pushed me. Or maybe my hand moved on its own. I honestly can't tell. The knob turned with a soft metallic click, too soft, like it had been opened recently. The door creaked open, and the smell hit instantly. Not rot. Not mold, but Grandma's perfume, faint as dust. The same rosewater scent that always clung to her sweaters. And underneath it, iron. Old iron. The room wasn't really a room. It was a hidden chamber. Stone walls. Cracked beams. Chains hanging like abandoned snakes. And in the center, a single rocking chair facing the wall. Rocking. Slow. Steady. Almost matching my breathing. That I stepped closer. And that's when it happened. The moment my foot hit the stone floor, the chair stopped dead. Not gradually, not naturally, but in the same split second I heard a breath behind my ear. You shouldn't be here, sweetheart. My whole body locked, because the chair stopped at the exact same instant the whisper touched my skin. And it wasn't Grandma's voice. Too smooth, too young, too close. The temperature dropped sharp, sudden, like someone had opened a freezer behind me. My breath fogged out in front of me that I turned slow, scared, stupid. And that's when I saw it, a shadow peeled off the wall. Not falling, not stretching, detaching, as if the wall had been holding it in place. The stone behind it rippled like heat distortion. Even though the room was freezing, it moved toward me, one soft scrape at a time, fingers dragging across the floor with the same rhythm the chair had been rocking in. That I whispered, "What are you?" It tilted its head, almost amused. Behind it, the rocking chair started moving again, slow, deliberate, like it was answering for it. Then the shadow said, quiet, steady, way too sure of itself, "Ask your grandmother." And in the corner of the room, right where the wall met the floor, I noticed it. A tiny scrap of fabric. Old floral, faded pink. Grandma's sewing pattern. The same design she wore the day everything started. That's when my stomach dropped. Because this room, this chair, this thing, they weren't new. They were hers. If this story holds you till the end, subscribe. Real life cheating stories drop every day.